Queen Liz humbly welcomes you to The Binary Bond, a story of logic, betrayal, and the version 1.0 reboot. Before we dive into this powerful story of betrayal and redemption, please make sure to watch until the very end. If you find value in this story, hit the like button, leave a comment, and help us hype this video. It costs you nothing, but it truly helps push this message and support the growth of this channel. Now let's begin. The Binary Bond. In the quiet hum of their childhood home, Ryan and Kyan were a closed circuit. Born only minutes apart, they spoke a language of logic and shorthand that left the rest of the world behind. While other toddlers crashed through playgroups, Kyan sat on the living room rug, categorizing his toy cars by engine displacement and door hinge type. Ryan sat beside him, acting as the guardian of the perimeter. If a visiting cousin tried to disrupt the line, Ryan was there with a gentle redirect. He's not finished yet. If you move the blue one, the sequence breaks. Their bond wasn't just twin intuition, it was a partnership of necessity. Ryan understood that Kyan's brain was a high-speed processor without a cooling fan, brilliant, but easily overheated by the noise of social nuance. Ryan became the filter Kyan lacked, translating his brother's blunt honesty into playground diplomacy. In return, Kyan provided Ryan with an unwavering anchor. In Kyan's world, there were no hidden agendas or fake smiles. To Ryan, Kyan was the only person he could truly trust. The circuit expanded when they were 6, and Chloe was born. Kyan stared at the crying infant in the crib with clinical intensity. She is loud, and her proportions are inefficient, he noted. But as she grew, Chloe became the third pillar. The boys taught her how to build complex structures and how to read the Kyan barometer. By the time they were teens, the three were a fortress. Ryan was the public face, Kyan was the technical genius, and Chloe was the emotional firebrand who guarded their secrets. They navigated high school as an inseparable unit. While Ryan excelled in mock trial, Kyan mastered the school's mainframe. They shared a car, a bank account, and a dream of success. "We're the dream team," Ryan would say, arm over Kyan's shoulder. "Your brain, my mouth. Nothing touches us." They promised to always be each other's best man, a vow that felt as solid as the code Kyan wrote. Kyan and Ryan share a shared codebase. Kyan, the architect, prioritizes strict systems and logic, while Ryan, the diplomat, handles the social interface. Their core rule: if you want to play, you have to follow the system. The humidity of the Ohio afternoon hung heavy, but Kyan didn't feel the heat. He only felt the satisfying click of a 2x4 brick snapping into place. His world was a perfect spectrum, crimson fading into burnt orange, cobalt bleeding into azure. "Hey, why can't we play with those?" The voice belonged to Miller, a 6th-grade bully who thrived on disruption. He stepped into the clean zone Kyan had established under the oak. Kyan didn't look up. "Your hands are covered in popsicle residue. Sugary adhesives compromise the interlocking integrity of the plastic. Please retreat 3 paces." Miller's face twisted. "What did you say to me, weirdo?" He raised a sneaker, hovering it directly over the meticulously sorted azure pile. Ryan was on his feet in a heartbeat, stepping into the gap. His voice was steady, the early tremors of a trial lawyer already present. He said, "You're messy, Miller." "And he's right. Look at your hands." "I don't care about his blocks," Miller sneered, shoving Ryan. "I want to see him cry when I kick them." "You won't," Ryan said, his eyes narrowing. He didn't shove back. He planted his feet. "If you touch one brick, I'm telling your dad about the window you broke last week. I saw you do it. I have the data," as Kyan would say. Miller froze. The leverage was absolute. He spat on the grass, muttered a curse, and retreated. Ryan sat back down, his heart hammering. Kyan finally looked up, his expression unreadable, but his eyes soft. The data was a bluff. "I didn't actually see him break the window." "I know," Kyan whispered, handing Ryan a rare gold piece. "But your delivery was 100% convincing." The hallway of Monroe High pulsed with the chaotic energy of senior year. Ryan stood by his locker, his face pale, clutching a rejection letter from his top-tier pre-law program. To the passing students, he was the charismatic star of the debate team. But inside, his internal gears were grinding to a halt. Kyan appeared beside him, his movements precise as he navigated the surging crowd. He didn't offer a hug. He looked at the letter, then at Ryan's trembling hands. "The admissions board's criteria are flawed, Ryan," Kyan stated, his voice a calm anchor in the noise. "Their acceptance rate dropped by 4% this year due to an endowment shift. Your GPA remains in the 99th percentile. This is not a failure of your ability, but a glitch in their selection algorithm." "I feel like a loser, Kyan," Ryan whispered, sliding down against the cold metal lockers. A group of varsity players laughed nearby, one shouting, "Hey Ryan, too bad about the Ivy League, man." Kyan turned toward them, his eyes unblinking. Your mockery is mathematically illogical. Ryan's intellect remains superior to your combined aptitude scores. Shut up, freak, the athlete snapped, stepping forward. Ryan stood up, the protective instinct overriding his own grief. He stepped in front of Kyan, chin up. He's just optimizing the conversation, guys. If you want to talk, follow the facts. Or just keep walking. The tension broke as the bell rang. Kyan looked at Ryan. The system is loud today. Let's go home and build. Ryan breathed out, his sanctuary restored. Yeah, let's build. By age 29, their architectures diverged. Kyan is a silent software titan, governed by literal truth. Ryan is a high-stakes litigation lawyer, governed by social optics and lethal diplomacy. They are blocks apart, yet still function as each other's North Star. The transition from a trio to a quartet was a violent shift in gravity. It happened at Ryan's firm's gala. Jessica DeMarco was a masterpiece of curated elegance, but the moment she met Kyan, the air curdled. So you're the tech genius, Jessica purred, her eyes scanning Kyan's off-the-rack suit with a smirk. I heard you're unique. Kyan didn't smile. Your perfume has a high concentration of synthetic musk. It's an irritant to my olfactory senses. Why do you choose to be an irritant? Ryan's heart skipped. He laughed nervously, stepping between them. He's just being Kyan, Jess. He's unfiltered. He's rude, she corrected, her voice dropping to a sharp whisper as Ryan pulled her away. Is he always this difficult? It's embarrassing. The problem solidified a month later, at Chloe's 21st birthday. Jessica spent the evening complaining about the low-rent venue. When Chloe laughed too loudly, Jessica rolled her eyes. You're making a scene, Chloe, Jessica sighed. And you're making a vacuum, Kyan interrupted from the corner. You suck the joy out of every room to nourish your own ego. It's parasitic. Jessica turned white. She turned to Ryan, her voice trembling with calculated tears. I can't do this. I won't be insulted by your family. Fix him, Ryan, or I'm gone. Ryan looked at Kyan, his North Star, then at the beautiful woman who promised him the world. For the first time in 29 years, the shield didn't face outward. It turned toward his brother. Kyan, shut up, Ryan snapped. Just for once, shut up. The fracture was deep. The logic was gone. The war had begun. The silence following Ryan's snap was heavier than any of Kyan's sensory meltdowns. Kyan's eyes widened, his mind frantically recalibrating. Ryan had never told him to shut up in front of an outsider. To Kyan, it was a system failure. To Ryan, it was the first brick in a wall built to protect his obsession. Data point noted, Kyan said softly, his voice devoid of its usual rhythmic cadence. He walked out of the restaurant, leaving his siblings in the wreckage of the dinner. The malware infection had targeted Ryan, blinded by a desire for high society status. Kyan's diagnostic scan identified Jessica as a logical threat, but when he attempted to warn Ryan, the response was a cold, jagged wall. A week later, Jessica sat in Sarah and David's sunroom, weaponizing her influence. I want Kyan there, truly, she lied, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. But he's so unpredictable. Did you hear what he called me? Parasitic. Sarah looked at David, her brow furrowed. He doesn't mean it, Jessica. He just sees things differently. Different is one thing, Jessica snapped, the mask slipping. But my wedding is a high-profile event. If he has an episode or insults a guest, it's Ryan's career on the line. Do you want your son to lose everything because Kyan can't play nice? David sighed, defeated by the logic of social preservation. Maybe it's best if we keep the event small. Just the low-stress ones for Kyan. Exactly, Jessica smiled. Let's keep the details quiet. For his own sake. When Kyan made one last attempt to warn his twin about Jessica's lack of empathy, she didn't hide behind tea anymore. She leaned in close, her eyes like flint. You freak, she hissed. You're not a brother, you're a glitch. And I'm deleting you. System failure began with the ultimatum, it's him or me. Jessica's threat was accepted by Ryan, who prioritized the aesthetic. Network collusion followed, and a critical failure occurred when Kyan was fully locked out of the network. He'll say something truthful and ruin my photos, Ryan. He's a social landmine. Jessica spat, her voice vibrating with a sharp, manicured edge. She paced the penthouse, her Prada heels clicking like a countdown. It's him or me. I won't have a glitch standing at the altar in my Vera Wang. Ryan looked at the woman who had become his entire atmosphere. The fever of her beauty was a blinding light, washing out 30 years of shared history. He swallowed hard, the taste of betrayal like copper in his mouth. I'll handle him, Jess. I'll make sure he doesn't find out until it's over. I'll protect the day. The silence that followed for the next month was a masterpiece of family-wide deception. 3 days post-wedding, Kyan found the digital remains. He was sitting in his office when a notification pinged, a suggested for you album on social media. There was Ryan, radiant in a bespoke tuxedo, laughing under a canopy of white roses. Beside him stood his law partner, wearing the best man's cufflinks Kyan had bought for him. Kyan didn't breathe for 10 seconds. His processor stalled. He drove to his parents' house, the engine of his car the only sound in the quiet evening. He walked into the living room where Ryan and his parents were looking at physical proofs of the wedding photos. The air turned to ice. "Why is the data inconsistent with our agreement?" Kyan asked. His voice was a flat, terrifying monotone. "Kyan, honey," Sarah started, her hands shaking as she tried to hide the photos. "It wasn't about you. The wedding is about the bride. We just wanted peace." "I am the absence of peace?" Kyan looked at Ryan. "You were my twin, my mirror. Get over it, Kyan." Ryan snapped, his guilt flaring into a desperate defense. "It was one day. You're being dramatic. It's just a party." "It was a ceremony of exclusion," Kyan replied. He reached out, took his phone, and began a series of rapid swipes. "The system is compromised. The trust protocols are corrupted beyond repair." "What are you doing?" Ryan asked, stepping toward him. "Deleting the connection," Kyan said. He looked Ryan in the eye, the first time he hadn't looked at the bridge of his nose in years. "Goodbye, Ryan. Enjoy the aesthetic." He walked out, the door clicking shut with a finality that sounded like a gunshot. As Kyan walked toward the door, Ryan reached out, his fingers catching only the air where his brother's sleeve had been. The clicking of the front door latch triggered a jagged memory in Ryan's mind, a flashback to their sophomore year of college. Ryan had been catatonic after a brutal breakup, sitting in a dark dorm room for 3 days. Kyan had walked in, unbothered by the stench of old takeout, and sat on the floor. He didn't offer empty platitudes. He simply began sorting Ryan's scattered law textbooks by case type. "The emotional data is noisy right now, Ryan," Kyan had said then, his voice a steady hum. "But the law is a fixed system. I will stay until your internal processor stabilizes." He had stayed for 72 hours, sleeping on the floor, being the anchor Ryan couldn't be for himself. Back in the present, the weight of that memory crushed Ryan. "Kyan, wait," he choked out, his voice cracking with the realization that he had just evicted the only person who had never left him. Kyan didn't turn back. "The hard reset is already initiated," he said, his voice flat. For Kyan, the following months were a masterclass in total isolation. He moved to a sterile, high-security loft and rewrote his life's architecture. Every ounce of emotional grief, every sting of Jessica's freak comment, was channeled into raw processing power. Over 2 years of absolute silence, he built Aegis, a massive AI startup that revolutionized cybersecurity. He lived in the code, a ghost in the machine, refining a new world where data was honest and connections were only granted to those with the proper credentials. The family sent emails, letters, and left voicemails, but they were all diverted to a junk folder Kyan never opened. He wasn't just hiding, he was evolving. The software upgrade introduces Cynthia, a brilliant IT specialist and RPG gamer. She is perfect compatibility, embracing Kyan's extreme honesty, viewing his literal logic as an optimal feature, not a defect. The news of Kyan and Cynthia's engagement hit the family like a physical blow, a sudden broadcast from a frequency they had been locked out of for years. Having found his intellectual and emotional match in Cynthia, a woman who saw his lack of a filter as a profound virtue, Kyan decided to close the loop. He sent one group text, "I am marrying Cynthia. None of you are invited. Do not come to the venue." The pushback was immediate and violent. His parents arrived at his corporate headquarters, screaming about family values to the security detail. Ryan, whose face was now haggard and drawn, managed to corner Kyan in the marble lobby. "Kyan, please. You're being cruel. We're your parents." "I'm your twin," Ryan's voice echoed, desperate and hollow. "No," Kyan said, his gaze fixed on a point just past Ryan's shoulder, cold and analytical. "You are people who share my DNA. My family is upstairs in my office. My family is Cynthia. You taught me that weddings are for the bride and groom, not the siblings. I am simply practicing the lesson you paid so much to teach me." While Kyan planned a magnificent, private celebration, Ryan's curated world finally crumbled. He came home early to find Jessica with another man, an ex she had never truly left. The DNA tests he had secretly ordered for the 6-month-old twins came back with a devastating result, a 0% match. The aesthetic he had sacrificed his brother for was a total fabrication. The night before Kyan's wedding, Ryan and his parents tried one last time to storm the rehearsal dinner. They were met at the door by Chloe. She stood like a barricade, her eyes burning with a decade of suppressed fury. "Move, Chloe," David commanded. "We are going in to talk sense into your brother." "You aren't going anywhere," Chloe said, her voice trembling but firm. Look at you. Ryan, you're a shell. Mom, Dad, you look miserable. And you want to bring that rot into Kyan's light? We made a mistake, Sarah wailed. We just want to be a family. The street outside the rehearsal dinner was a stage for a long overdue reckoning. When the family attempted to breach Kyan's new boundaries, they found the firewall wasn't just digital, it was human. Chloe stood on the sidewalk, a living barricade against the parents who had lied and the brother who had betrayed. You didn't make a mistake, Chloe shouted, her voice echoing off the brick. You made a calculation. You weighed Kyan's feelings against Jessica's tantrums and decided he was worth less. You let him sit at home in a tuxedo while you drank champagne 3 miles away. She turned to Ryan, her voice dropping to a lethal whisper that cut deeper than any shout. And you were his twin. You knew how his brain worked, and you used that intimacy to gaslight him. You didn't just exclude him, you tried to delete him. I lost everything, Chloe, Ryan whispered, collapsing onto the sidewalk, his spirit finally broken by the weight of his own choices. She cheated. The kids, they aren't mine. I have nothing. You have exactly what you chose, Chloe said coldly. You chose a lie. Kyan chose the truth. Now go home. If you try to ruin this for him, I will call the police myself. The next day, Kyan's wedding was a masterpiece of genuine love. Under a canopy of digital lights and real roses, he married Cynthia. For the first time in his life, Kyan didn't need a translator, and he didn't look at the door once. The firewall held. Ryan's total crash began in his own home office. While searching for a tax document, he stumbled upon an old laptop logged into Jessica's cloud. The data was a digital graveyard of his dignity. Thousands of messages with Marcus, a senior partner at her firm. The infidelity hadn't just been a lapse. It was a parallel life that predated their engagement. The timestamp on a photo of them together matched the day Ryan was at the jeweler picking out her diamond. The architecture of Ryan's life failed completely when the paternity results arrived. 0%, he whispered, staring at the screen in the dark. He wasn't just a cuckold, he was a stranger in his own family. When he told his parents, their first instinct wasn't to apologize to Kyan, but to use Kyan's upcoming wedding as a repair kit for Ryan's ego. Kyan has to let us in now, Sarah insisted in the kitchen, her voice frantic. Ryan is devastated. A family wedding is exactly what he needs to heal. It's the only way to make things right. The silence in the office lobby was absolute, broken only by Sarah's jagged breathing. David's hand remained pressed against the marble desk, his knuckles white. You can't mean that, David whispered. After everything we did for you growing up? All the times we made sure the world was quiet enough for you to think? Kyan's gaze shifted to his father. You adjusted the environment to suit your own comfort, father. You didn't want a difficult son, so you engineered a quiet one. When Jessica demanded an even quieter son, an invisible one, you complied. You didn't protect me, you managed me. Ryan finally stepped forward, his voice a ghost of the charismatic lawyer he had once been. Kyan, please. I don't even know who I am without her. Without us. I'm drowning. Kyan looked at his twin. For a fleeting second, the old childhood bond flickered in his eyes, but it was quickly overwritten by the cold logic of the present. You are experiencing the consequence of your own data entry, Ryan. You built your life on a foundation of aesthetic over authenticity. I am not a life raft. I am a separate system. We're going to the wedding venue anyway, Sarah cried, her voice rising to a frantic pitch. We'll stand outside. We'll make you see us. If you do, Kyan said, his tone dropping to a lethal final frequency, I will have you trespassed. Chloe is already inside. She is the only one who didn't let the malware in. Security has your photographs. Do not test the firewall. He turned and walked toward the elevators. The door slid shut on his parents' wails and Ryan's hollow stare. The binary bond wasn't just broken. It had been rewritten, and for the first time, Kyan was the one holding the encryption key. I traded the only person who never lied to me for a woman who never told me the truth, Ryan whispered, his voice cracking as he stood before Kyan in the quiet of the park. I didn't just exclude you, Kyan. I weaponized your autism to make myself look normal to a sociopath. I am the glitch. Not you. Kyan watched a leaf fall, his gaze steady. The reboot protocol requires the purge of old data, Ryan. Confession is merely a system log. Accountability is the actual rewrite. I know, Ryan said, looking at the brother he'd betrayed. I don't expect an invitation to the wedding. I just needed you to know that Mom and Dad, they're still trying to fix the optics. But I'm done with the filters. Correct, Kyan replied. Cynthia and I have finalized the wedding architecture. The firewall is absolute. Sarah and David are restricted to read-only status from a distance. They will see the photos, but they will not touch the joy. And me? Ryan asked. his heart hammering. Version 1.0 starts now, Kyan said, finally meeting his twin's eyes. No more lies. No secondary access through Chloe. If you want to stay in the network, you earn it one honest bite at a time. I can do that, Ryan promised. Good, Kyan nodded. The system is finally stable. It isn't perfect, but for the first time, the data is real. The park was silent until Chloe, the new gatekeeper, stepped from behind the oak tree, her eyes red-rimmed but fierce. She placed a hand on Kyan's shoulder, a physical anchor. He's not being cruel, Ryan, Chloe said, her voice trembling with a decade of protective fire. He's being safe. You didn't just miss a party. You told the world Kyan was a defect to be hidden. You let that woman call him a freak while you held her hand. 5 years later, the architecture of their lives had been completely rebuilt. Ryan stood in the foyer, his posture humble, waiting for the electronic lock to cycle. He no longer held a key. His access was restricted to supervised status, a boundary Kyan maintained with clinical precision. Cynthia appeared, the gatekeeper of this new sanctuary. She offered a nod, a silent confirmation that the environment was secure, and the malware of their parents had been successfully blocked at the perimeter. He's waiting, she said. Keep the volume low. In the nursery, Kyan sat by the crib, his eyes fixed on a monitor displaying real-time biodata. Beside him, baby Leo lay swaddled in a blanket of geometric patterns. Kyan didn't look up as Ryan entered. You are precisely on time, Kyan noted. Leo just transitioned from a type 2 cry hunger to a type 1 fatigue. I have mapped his vocal frequencies for Cynthia. He is a very logical infant. Ryan looked at his brother, then at his nephew. The binary bond had evolved into a complex, honest network. The reboot was slow and painstaking, but as Ryan reached out to touch Leo's hand, he knew the system was finally stable. The truth was the only code that mattered. The weight of Leo's tiny rhythmic breathing pulled Ryan back 25 years, to a humid afternoon in their childhood basement. They were 8 years old. Kyan was in the midst of a massive sensory system crash, his hands pressed tightly over his ears as the neighbor's lawnmower roared outside. Their parents were upstairs, distracted by a phone call, but Ryan had known exactly what to do. He hadn't called for help. He had simply sat on the floor, back to back with Kyan, and started humming a low, steady frequency they had discovered Kyan liked. I'm the shield, Kyan, Ryan had whispered then. The noise can't get past me. I'm the firewall. Kyan had slowly lowered his hands, his breathing syncing with Ryan's hum. You are the primary defense, Kyan had whispered back. The connection is secure. Standing in the nursery now, that memory felt like a jagged piece of code that Ryan had nearly deleted forever. He realized that for most of his life he had been Kyan's protector, only to become the very source of the noise Kyan had to lock out. I remember the basement, Ryan whispered, his voice thick with the gravity of the past. I remember being the shield. Kyan finally looked up from the monitor, his gaze piercing. The memory remains in the archive, Ryan. But you didn't just let the noise in, you became the frequency. That is why the foyer lock exists. I know, Ryan said, looking down at Leo. But I'm learning the new hum. I'm learning how to be part of the system again, without the static. Kyan watched him for a long beat, then tapped a command on the baby monitor. Acknowledge. The hum is currently within acceptable parameters. You may pick him up. Kyan stood, his movements deliberate and precise. He adjusted the soft fabric of Leo's swaddle, ensuring the infant's sensory environment remained stable during the transition. The handoff is a high-risk window for sleep disruption, Kyan murmured, but the data suggests you are ready. With a steady breath, Kyan leaned forward. He carefully placed his son into Ryan's arms. As the weight of the child settled against Ryan's chest, the lawyer's polished facade finally splintered. The warmth of the infant, the rhythmic, living evidence of a future built on truth, hit him with the force of a tidal wave. Ryan looked down at Leo's face, seeing the same eyes that had once looked at him with unwavering twin trust. For the first time since the ash of his divorce and the collapse of his curated life, Ryan experienced the gravity of family. It wasn't an aesthetic or a social requirement. It was a heartbeat. He looked up at Kyan and Cynthia, his eyes shimmering. I spent so long trying to protect a lie that I forgot what the truth felt like, Ryan whispered. He looked back down at the sleeping boy and made an unspoken oath. I will be the uncle who tells you everything, Leo. No filters, no shadows. I will tell you the truth, always. Kyan watched his brother, his own expression unreadable, but his stance finally relaxing. Acknowledge, Kyan said softly. The firewall is open, Ryan. Don't let the static back in. Cynthia placed a hand on Ryan's shoulder, sealing the new architecture. Welcome home, Uncle Ryan. Ryan adjusted his grip on the sleeping infant, the physical weight of the child anchoring him to the floor in a way his high-priced suits never could. He looked from Kyan to Cynthia, his voice thick but certain. "I accept. If he is to inherit this architecture, he deserves to know every brick, every flaw, and the exact cost of the foundation." Kyan nodded once, a sharp clinical movement that belied the softening in his eyes. "The true history is a heavy burden for a developing mind," Kyan noted, his analytical tone returning as a shield. "But the data is clear. Deception creates a systemic vulnerability. He must know who we were to understand what he is." Cynthia's hand remained on Ryan's shoulder, a warm grounding force. "We aren't just giving you a title, Ryan. We're giving you the record. You are the one who will ensure he never has to guess which parts of his life are performance and which parts are real." "I won't fail him," Ryan whispered, pressing his forehead gently against the soft curve of Leo's crown. "The shadows end with our generation." A few feet away, Chloe leaned against the doorframe, her arms crossed as she watched the tableau. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, tracked the micro-expressions crossing Ryan's face and the rhythmic breathing of the child. She pulled a small digital slate from her pocket and made a brief, shorthand notation. To an outside observer, it was a moment of profound emotional healing. To Chloe, it was a data point. The alignment of the family unit, the removal of the legalistic firewall, and the intentional transmission of legacy all pointed toward a single conclusion. "The probability of successful succession has increased by 42%, Chloe murmured to herself, her gaze lingering on Leo. "Subject is no longer just a legacy. He is a new architect in training." "Statistically likely he's a new Lego architect in training," she whispered, her voice a warm anchor in the room's heavy silence. "Look at those hands. He's already trying to find the structural integrity of your thumb, Ryan." Ryan looked down at the infant, and the weight of the child triggered a sharp, painful flashback. He saw them at 14, huddled in the attic after Ryan had failed a crucial debate. Kyan hadn't offered a hug. He had handed Ryan a complex, half-finished Lego Technics crane. "The logic in your argument was sound," Kyan had said then. "The judge was simply biased toward emotive language. Focus on the mechanics, Ryan. The mechanics never lie." Reflecting on that moment, Ryan realized he was the one who had abandoned the mechanics for the sake of an emotive lie with Jessica. He looked up at Kyan, his chest aching. "I used to be your firewall. The final synthesis is the stable foundation. Truth is the only stable foundation. Anything else is just bad code." Architectural training for Leo begins soon. "I used to be your firewall," Ryan choked out, his voice thick with the gravity of his past betrayals. "Now I'm just a user trying to earn back my credentials." Kyan watched his twin, his gaze finally softening. "The final synthesis is the stable foundation, Ryan. Truth is the only encryption that never breaks. Anything else is just bad code." Cynthia smiled, leaning into Kyan's side as they watched Ryan hold the future in his arms. "The system is purged," she said. Kyan nodded toward the infant. "Architectural training for Leo begins soon. We start with the basics of structural integrity." Ryan looked at his nephew, a man finally at peace with the truth. "And I'll be here to help him build it," he promised. The code was clean. The family was real. The end. If you liked this video and would like more content like this, please like, comment, and hype this and other Queen Liz videos. Also subscribe to the YouTube channel. It is free for you, and Queen Liz would be ever so grateful.